The U.S. is set to announce the easing of some financial sanctions against Sudan for its recent efforts in tackling terrorism. The party of Gambia's president-elect Adama Barrow says President Yahya Jammeh would be honored as a former head of state if he steps down. And a live studio interview with a Rwandan Catholic priest who was recently barred from returning home to register his opposition party. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent Makori. This is Africa 54. The newly released 2017 report on human rights reveals that one of the biggest threats to human rights in 2016 was the rise of populism. The annual report by Human Rights Watch cites the human rights implications of key elections in the United States and around the globe, as well as the refugee crisis and the rise of demagogues. VOA's Maria Madiallo has more.
The 687-page report, the 27th edition, reviewed human rights practices in more than 90 countries. This is a uniquely troubling time, says Human Rights Watch Executive Director Kenneth Roth, because the global rise of populist leaders poses an extraordinary threat to human rights.
Nativism, xenophobia, racism, Islamophobia, and misogyny are all on the rise. If the voices of intolerance prevail, the world risks entering a dark era.
He says violent terror attacks have generated fear and suspicion, and also an increasing sense that governments and the elite ignore public concerns. This has created an environment of discontent in which certain politicians are flourishing.
They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists.
Donald Trump's successful presidential campaign vividly illustrated this politics of intolerance. He stereotyped migrants, vilified refugees, attacked a judge for his ancestry, dismissed multiple allegations of sexual abuse, and pledged to roll back women's ability to control their own fertility.
But Trump says he won because Americans were dissatisfied with the Obama administration. Roth believes that Trump's tactics are catching on elsewhere.
Leading the charge have been Marine Le Pen in France and Geert Wilders in the Netherlands. But there are echoes of this intolerance in the Brexit campaign, the rhetoric of Viktor Orban in Hungary and Jaroslaw Kaczynski in Poland, and far-right parties from Germany to Greece.
Larry Sabato from the University of Virginia Center for Politics via Skype.
It ought to concern anyone who cares about small d democracy because often what happens in the United States or in other democracies like Great Britain ends up being replicated in other democracies such as France, Germany, and beyond.
Roth also criticizes what he referred to as the strong men of Russia, Turkey, the Philippines, Egypt, and China, whom he says are increasingly substituting their own authority for accountable government and the rule of law.
President Erdogan's increasingly dictatorial rule in Turkey, Egypt, under President Sisi, produced a rule that is far more repressive than anything that happened even under President Mubarak. President Putin has restricted assembly and expression, penalized online dissent, and crippled civil society groups. China's Xi Jinping has embarked on a similar path of repression.
Roth also cautioned against leaders in Africa who have removed or extended term limits and the recent withdrawal announcement from the International Criminal Court by a few of them. In Washington, Maria Madiallo, VOA News.
U.S. President-elect Donald Trump's campaign and Twitter pronouncements on world affairs have won him a variety of foreign policy labels: a non-interventionist, an isolationist, a unilateralist, and a realist. As Trump prepares for his inauguration on January the 20th, VOA's Masoud Fariver reports on three forces driving Trump's foreign policy.
For a foreign policy novice, President-elect Trump had plenty to say about world affairs during the campaign. He slammed NATO members for not spending their fair share on defense, warmed up to Russia, put China on notice and made an expletive-laden vow to bomb Islamic State. But just as his two predecessors found out when they entered the White House, so too will Trump, who could face a different set of issues than he campaigned on, says Blaise Mishtal of the Bipartisan Policy Center in Washington.
The world is not necessarily going to allow President Trump to do everything he has planned on.
Instead, Mishtal says Trump's foreign policy will likely be driven by three forces: unexpected world events, the policies he outlined during the campaign, and the advice he gets from his national security team. To guide his foreign policy, Trump has tapped ExxonMobil CEO Rex Tillerson for Secretary of State and retired four-star General James Mattis for Secretary of Defense.
We're in the process of putting together one of the great cabinets, certainly a cabinet with the highest IQ.
Critics worry about Trump's lack of foreign experience.
On foreign policy, he's exhibited no experience and no record that should reassure anyone about his ability to deal with today's complicated global environment.
But Trump advisors say a president's judgment and competence is far more important than his foreign policy resume. James Carafano of the Conservative Heritage Foundation advises the Trump transition team on foreign policy.
Mr. Trump almost has no track record on foreign national security affairs. Doesn't mean that he can't be a great president. Doesn't mean he won't be a great president. Just means that there's no context to filter that through it.
But there is one context: Trump's business background and proclivity to view everything, from relations with China and Russia to the Iran nuclear deal, as a deal-making opportunity.
It's the art of the deal. And so I think you see a lot of what he said being his negotiating positions, right? And I think he sees his contacts with foreign leaders as a part of a negotiation.
But foreign policy is not a business deal, and neither are presidential decisions, which often carry consequences affecting life and death, and sometimes war and peace. I'm Milar Sega for Masood Farivar, VOA News, Washington.
Well, the United States is set to announce the easing of some financial sanctions against Sudan on Friday for its recent efforts in helping tackle terrorism. The United States first imposed sanctions on Sudan in 1997, including a trade embargo and blocking the government's assets for human rights violations and terrorism concerns. In September 2016, the State Department welcomed efforts by Sudan to increase counterterrorism cooperation with the United States. In West Africa, the party of Gambia's President-elect Adama Barrow says President Yahya Jammeh will be honored as a former head of state if he stepped down. Barrow also suggested that Jammeh might not face trial for alleged crimes during his 22 years in power. Now, the question of whether Gambia can install Barrow as president is seen as a test case for African democracy in a region accustomed to coups and autocratic rule. Nigeria's lower house on Thursday voted to offer Jammeh asylum if he steps down, as Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari prepared to return to Gambia on Friday to persuade him to stand down. Well, Italy reopened its embassy in the Libyan capital Tripoli this week, becoming the first Western country to do so since most pulled out in 2015, as the conflict between rival factions worsened. Well, the chaos has allowed Libya to become the major gateway for migrants to Italy. But as Henry Bridgell reports, analysts say Italy's move is also aimed at countering increased Russian influence in Libya's fragile politics.
Italy's foreign minister described the embassy reopening as a great gesture of friendship to the Libyan people and also promised more controls on migration from Libyan shores. Analysts say the move is partly driven by domestic politics.
Everybody knows that migration will be the key topic during the next electoral campaign. So the government is basically trying to intervene, and what it would like to do is to help basically the Libyan security sector, Libyan militias, to stop the migrants before they reach the coast and before they can actually reach the southern Europe.
It is also a show of support for the UN-brokered government in Tripoli, which is suffering internal divisions as it struggles to establish legitimacy. The Arab League's envoy to Libya warned this week the country is at breaking point.
The security situation in Libya remains unstable and could explode at any moment if the political process fails.
One of two other rival administrations rules the east of Libya, overseen by self-styled strongman General Khalifa Haftar, head of the Libyan National Army. Last November, Haftar met Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov in Moscow to ask for military help. This week, the Russian aircraft carrier Admiral Kuznetsov, seen here last year supporting Moscow's operations in Syria, arrived in the eastern Libyan city of Tobruk. General Haftar was invited on board and met senior Russian military chiefs.
General Haftar is the perfect, I would say, interlocutor for the Russians, because he is, let's say, very much keen to re-establish the old order in Libya. And it's very similar to the situation that the Russians have faced in Syria, supporting somebody who wants to re-establish order, re-establish control over Libya.
Moscow's backing for Haftar sets up another arena of potential rivalry between Russia and the West.
It's clear that their end goal is to support Haftar, to make sure that he can win and rule Libya, and to increase their influence in the region.
A UN-backed arms embargo on Libya has been in place since 2011. Analysts say Moscow sees potential change on the horizon.
It's very clear that they are waiting for Trump to be the next president in the US and to understand what are the new rules of the game in Libya.
If those rules change, analysts say further international involvement would make Libya's precarious situation even more so. Henry Ridgewell for VOA News, London.
Well, in today's business news, infrastructure developments are opening up Ethiopia to more foreign investment. Here's Africa 54's business correspondent Jill Malandrino reporting from the NASDAQ market site, looking at sectors that have the potential to attract more interest, or rather investment.
Now that the multi-billion-dollar China-built 750-kilometer rail line is chugging along, linking the port city of Djibouti and Addis Ababa, one of the fastest-growing economies in Africa, Ethiopia has another boost to change its global image from a country filled with drought and famine to one that is filled instead with factories and railways. Infrastructure and energy-generating investments and intracontinental trade are the keys to all African countries. But today, let's dive deeper into what other sectors make Ethiopia particularly attractive to institutional investors. Jacques Nell, he's an analyst over NKC African Economics, a research firm based in South Africa. He believes that foreign investors will be circling Ethiopia with the hope that stakes will be offered in the country's much-coveted financial and telecom sectors. With a largely unserviced population of nearly 100 million, Ethiopia's financial and telecommunications sectors hold considerable investment potential. Let's just take a look at the stunning growth in Nigeria's telecom sector for some context. Africa's most populous country had 151 million subscribers at the end of 2015. That's up from just 19.5 million in 2005, according to a Bureau report. That said, Ethiopia's public sector's dominance in banking sector forms a cornerstone of the country's state-driven economic growth model, and both of these sectors remain salient sources of government revenue. There's also some political unrest and state of emergency still active. Such concerns will be forefront of many prospective investors, but NKC believes that the potential long-term rewards could certainly outweigh the risks. From the NASDAQ market site in New York, I'm Jill Malandrino, and this is Africa 54 Business News.
Well, thanks a lot, Jill. Now, California's Silicon Valley, known as the global center of high-tech innovation, is also a showcase for immigrant success stories. In 2013, two immigrant startups were among the top 5 biggest Silicon Valley venture capital deals, and they are now established players. Shakib Al-Islam explores how these newcomers to America found success in the competitive technology industry.
California's Silicon Valley provides a platform that turns dreams into reality.
Okay, so nice meeting you.
Hey, welcome. For many immigrants, just getting to America is the goal. Others dream bigger.
See, now I'm an investor.
Kasser Yunus is one such example. Today, he is the chief operating officer of one of the biggest venture capital firms in Silicon Valley, Y Combinator. But he was once just another kid from a remote village in Pakistan's Punjab. Yunus says he always knew he could make it big in Silicon Valley.
Silicon Valley is the unique part of my experience rather than maybe being U.S. And if you look at Silicon Valley, more than half of the companies in Silicon Valley are started by immigrants.
So why don't you do a quick...
Once a startup owner himself who needed funds to run his business, Yunus is now a top executive of Y Combinator, which helps startups grow their business.
What is the target segment?
Yunus is a venture capitalist, an investor who believes a startup will succeed and lends it money in return for an ownership stake.
Pro? Is this amateur?
Yunus moved from startup owner to venture capitalist. But another Pakistani immigrant, Dilawar Syed, did the reverse.
The idea of making an impossible possible is the way we operate.
Freshdesk is a cloud-based software company based in San Francisco that helps businesses manage customer service. President Dilawar Syed says Silicon Valley is more than a location. It's a state of mind that provides big opportunities for immigrants.
I think the Valley is unique. In that ecosystem, there is an interesting mix of enabling factors that allow people to develop themselves, to push themselves, to take risks, fail often, and then succeed, quite often in a spectacular fashion.
So, what is the secret behind making it big in Silicon Valley?
One, be a software engineer, and two, try to start something yourself.
Two Silicon Valley success stories hoping to inspire the next generation of entrepreneurs. Saqibul Islam, VOA News, Silicon Valley, California.
Well, I want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we covered. During the conversation on Facebook, the address is Africa 54. Check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Find me on Twitter at VOA Vince Makori. Well, coming up, a way forward for Rwanda. Stay with us.
This is BizBeat.
The sun sets over Tel Aviv, where thousands of entrepreneurs create high-tech startup companies in a land with few natural resources.
No mining, no oil, no stuff like that. The only natural resource that we have is the most powerful one, the human brain.
Moshe Hogeg is the co-founder of Siren Labs, claiming to make the world's most secure phone, but they've raked in $70 million in venture capital. Another startup, Aerobotics, has secured millions of dollars also, designing drones requiring no human involvement. Worldwide, Tel Aviv is considered a top startup destination, and Ayal Gura, an investor and founder of Zebra Medical Vision, says Israel has 3 times more venture money per capita than the United States.
So it's easier to raise money here, actually.
And Madi Kushner develops glasses projecting 3D images and holograms, and he says,
"We are not afraid of failures."
For VOA's BizBeat, I'm Philip Alexio.
Welcome back. Now, Thomas Nahimana is a Rwandan Catholic priest. He was recently barred from returning to Rwanda, where he was intending to register an opposition party and run for president in 2017. He and 3 others were stopped from boarding a connecting flight in Nairobi, Kenya. Officials in Rwanda have branded him a dangerous person. Father Nahimana now joins me in studio to talk about his ordeal and political future. Welcome to Africa 54. First, take us to Nairobi. What happened? Were you told why you could not go to Rwanda? That's your country.
Yeah. They told us just that there was a comment from the Rwandan government that we were not allowed to board that flight.
Yeah, tonight. Now, my question, though, is you live in France. You've been an asylum seeker. You actually got asylum in Rwanda. I mean, in France, right?
Yeah, I have even the French citizenship. Yeah.
So you need a visa to go to Rwanda.
I asked first
for the
to
visa
renew my Rwandan passport because I have it.
Yeah.
And then, as I didn't get it, I asked for a visa as using my French passport in order to go there.
Did they give you?
I didn't. Until now, I have no visa.
So were you like trying to sneak into Rwanda without a visa, though?
I want to go there, and I think I can go. I can go even with my ancient Rwandan passport. I think it is my right to go back to my country.
Question is, some people look at you and a few others and say, you know what, you don't stand a chance against President Kagame. Why do you really want to go, knowing that your chances are almost zero?
That is their idea.
Yeah.
We have another idea because they think that we are Rwandan citizen and we have the right to run. We are going back there because we know that people are tired with the regime that they have since 22 years now. They need a change. And we know that we have supporters, many supporters in Rwanda, that they will vote for us.
The last time a person who was opposed to the government went to Rwanda, that was Victoria Ingabire. She was arrested and she was imprisoned to 8 years. Do you just want to get imprisoned perhaps in Rwanda so you become this, big hero? Prisoner?
I could say that it is ridiculous to put that lady in the prison now because everybody knows that there is any charge really against her. And even if she's in prison, we know that we have to, not to fight, but to try to have our rights. So we are going to try also.
You've been labeled by the Rwanda non-government organization, Ibuka, which supports genocide survivors, that you're actually a revisionist. In other words, you're a denier of genocide.
Yeah. It is sad, very sad to hear some Rwandans use that kind of weapon in order to stop leaders, opposition leaders like me. Because I can't be a genocide denier. I have no interest in being a genocide denier. I can't be a genocide denier because during the genocide I was in the country and I had members of my family killed also because I'm from a mixed family.
Yes.
I can't deny that.
So very realistically, though, Father Nahimana, do you see the environment in Rwanda as being kind of conducive for you to go in, organize, have an election and run against Mr. Kagame, who the Constitution has allowed to run until 2034?
I had nothing to say about his third term now because he had his 2 terms. Allowed by the Constitution. It was enough for a president who did many things in the country, as they say. Now, I think we have our chance. Even if he did things, I think that do not allow him to be a life president. And now we need that change, and I think we need to participate and to give our contribution to the development of our country.
Okay, we hope you get that opportunity. Thank you very much for coming on to our show today.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Well, Thomas Nahimana, he's a Rwandan Catholic priest and also a leader of the political group Ishema. Well, it's now time for a short break, still to come on Africa 54. Gardening in the U.S. with Zimbabwe in our mind. We'll be right back.
If you've just joined us, I'm Mariama Diallo, and here is a quick recap of today's headlines. In Mali, leaders from some 30 African states and France meet in Bamako on Friday. Talks are expected to focus on Africa's battle against jihadists and a bid to improve its democratic record. In the U.S., the Obama administration is set to lift some financial sanctions against Sudan. In the Gambia, President-elect Adama Barrow's inauguration, scheduled for January 19th, remains uncertain as the incumbent Yahya Jammeh refuses to step down. Finally, in Italy, some 800 migrants are rescued after attempting to cross the Mediterranean during a window of good weather. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Welcome back. Now, gardening is the last thing most immigrants do when they migrate to the United States. But for a Zimbabwean woman who came to the U.S. in 1995, her passion for tilling the land has not deserted her, despite landing a modest job at her adopted home in Maryland's Montgomery County. Chris Gandhi has the story.
It's a weekend and most people are either resting at home after a long week or taking part in some recreational activities. But for the mother of two, this is the time that she gets down to some business in the fields, laboring as it were, loving every minute of it.
I started in 2010 through a community-based gardening project in Germantown, where I live. That's where I started getting involved in gardening on a smaller scale. I was very lucky that I got connected to the right people at the right time, because they were offering people who are passionate about gardening or farming, or people who want to engage themselves in farming as a business. In Montgomery County had this program for new farmer projects, whereby they link landowners with new farmers who want to do farming.
Raised at a farm in Zimbabwe's eastern highlands, Spandler came to the United States in 1995, and in 2010 she got an opportunity to do her agro-business at a 2-acre farm in Maryland's Gaithersburg. Spandler grows a variety of crops, most of which are for African cuisine, and therefore her biggest market is fellow Africans, mostly from her native Zimbabwe.
I also have okra, and I have corn, which is coming up very soon. I also have cucumbers. Well, here they call them horned melon, but in Zimbabwe I know we call them magaga eminzwa. My focus is mainly for my fellow Zimbabweans here, who I know enjoy the vegetables, as well as people in diaspora from other countries. I think there's great opportunity, especially here in the Washington metropolitan area, where there are people from all over the world, and we know people have their indigenous type of vegetable crops that they enjoy from their countries of origin.
From flora and fauna to maize cobs, Spandler grows it all. Reporting for VOA, this is Chris Gandhi.
Well, and that's our show for today. Now be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. For more news, tune in to VOA's evening radio show, African News Tonight at 1800 UTC, and in the mornings to Daybreak Africa between 0300 and 0600 UTC, Monday through Friday. Thanks a lot for watching from all of us here in Washington. Have a good night.
Welcome to Voice of America's News Words.
This news word has something to do with speed.
Expedite.
Other groups are also working on treatments and vaccines. Researchers at NewLink Genetics in Iowa say they have a vaccine that was 100% effective when given to monkeys. The company received a federal grant to step up its work and expedite human testing.
Expedite. Expedite means to speed up or hurry up a process.
Our story is about the deadly Ebola virus. The U.S. government says the company NewLink Genetics can speed up testing their vaccine on humans.
So the next time you hear the word expedite, you will know what this news word means.